You're now joining Cats on Guard, the #1 podcast about life behind the cockpit door. We're going to share the untold stories from the sky. We're talking crazy layovers, oddball crew members, hotel and restaurant views, and more.
I'm MC Howe. From instructing, piloting, flight attending, I've been doing this since the 90s.
And I'm Captain Richard, and I've been doing this since 2006.
Hey, we're going to spill secrets from the sky.
Wouldn't that be dive bombing?
Lav dumping.
Welcome to Cats on Guard.
And welcome again to Cats on Guard. I am MC Howe. Joining me as always is Rich Million. What's happening today?
Well, we are about to discuss some wild things that we've heard while flying.
I know, and it brings us to the title of this podcast, Cats on Guard. It doesn't make any sense to anybody who just sees it and they'd be like, why would I listen to a podcast about cats guarding what? Well, that's not what it is. When we are pilots in the air, sometimes we hear weird things on the radio.
What do you mean on the radio?
Okay, so when we talk in the air, we have to talk to ground controllers, air traffic controllers, tower controllers. They tell us what to do. I once actually heard, and these guys, they have this power that they think they wield, I think. Somebody was telling me a story. There was a pilot that was getting vectored into a thunderstorm, a big bad thunderstorm, and they didn't want to go into it, which you wouldn't want to go into a big bad thunderstorm because they're very uncomfortable. Bad for everybody, bad for the airplane. And this controller kept telling the guy, fly this heading. This heading's going to take him right into this thunderstorm. He said, I'm not going to fly that heading. I need a different heading. No, you have to fly this heading. And they argued back and forth for a while. Eventually, the pilot said, okay, fine, I'll do what you want, but I have a question. And do you know what the question was?
What was the question?
The question was, hey, air traffic controller, am I up here because you're down there? Or are you down there because I'm up here?
Oh, boy.
Yeah. And you know what happened? The next thing he said, proceed as requested or something. Anyway, he didn't have to go into the thunderstorm. So that was a good thing. But yeah, everyone seems to think that we're just, I don't know what people think, to be honest with you. They maybe have a notion that we just fly along and do our thing, whatever we need, and get where we're going. But there's a whole series of people that participate, and they have a system in place to help guide us from point A to point B. And a lot of that requires us to talk to people on the radio.
Now, a lot of misconception I've heard out there is that controllers are telling us how to get there and that we don't actually know.
That's right.
We can go into a lot of detail about the difference of that.
Well, do we really know?
Well, there's a process that starts before we ever get to the airport. Our dispatch sets up a route from our departure to destination. Dispatchers plan the route around weather the best they can, but we still have the ever-changing world.
Boring.
All
this
right.
Is what happens. Okay.
Right.
No.
Yeah, you tell me how it really happens.
All that happens. Yes, it's true. But the point of all of this is to say that we talk on the radio, and yes, we know where we're going because it's all been planned out, and we do partake in that to an extent, some more than others. At the airline level, yeah, there's a whole department that does it. Once we get in the airplane, there's how many airplanes do you think are in the sky at any given moment? You ever look at one of those maps, airplane maps?
Thousands.
You can't see anything, right? You can't see the ground because there's just airplanes overlapping one another everywhere. And it looks very crowded. We're going to crash into each other at any given moment, right? Of course, you have to remember also, do you know what the largest thing on the earth is?
Water?
No, it's the sky.
Oh, okay.
Think about the sky.
Is the sky on the earth, or are we? Okay, I'll give you that.
I'm going to say gravity keeps it here.
Okay.
If you believe in gravity.
Yeah, I don't know.
So
Pretty flat earth we have here, so.
It's a really big sky. Comparatively, airplanes are really little, so we don't crash into each other. But there is a system in place that helps us avoid that. And part of that is air traffic controller on the radio talking to us, warning us, in fact, if we are going to get too close to one another. That really doesn't ever happen. They say, hey, you got traffic. It's, so many miles away and it's going this direction. Look for it. Do you see it? Half the time I don't. So we're talking on the radio all the time. We have in the aircraft, how many radios? 2, 3 sometimes? Well, you can only
Yep.
talk on one at a time, although usually there's 2 of us. So each person could be talking on a separate radio. But then we have another radio that we use and we just listen to it. And do you know what that radio is called?
We call that the guard radio.
We do call it the guard radio. But what is it for? Who's guarding what? It is a frequency, 121.5, what, megahertz? Not?
I can see a lot of people buying transceivers and getting onto that frequency. Oh, I guess they can Google it, right?
Yeah,
Anyway.
it's not. That's not private information. Go to liveatc.net and you can listen to it.
That's true.
So 121.5 is the guard frequency, and it is the one that is used for emergency purposes. That's what it's intended. So we're supposed to monitor it. If anything should go astray, somebody in a ground control frequency somewhere is going to come on that frequency and say, hey, this is going on.
Everybody's listening to it.
Everybody's listening.
Every airplane in the sky should be listening.
It is a requirement of the job. We stand there and we listen to it. And what do we normally hear?
Not emergencies, but we
Not
do hear
anything.
stuff.
We don't really hear, for the most part, 90% of the time, 95% of the time, nothing.
Tell me about the 5%.
The 5% is reserved for, hey, aircraft, you blundered into airspace you're not supposed to be in. And so they call you up, and if you're listening, hopefully you respond to it. A lot of times it is for an aircraft that someone else can't get a hold of for whatever reason. You missed a radio call and now you're flying along blind and nobody knows how to talk to you. Well, they call you up on 121.5 and they say, hey, aircraft, we're looking for you. Call this frequency. Sometimes it's for a company. Company can't get a hold of you. Maybe your little in-flight texting device has gone down and your dispatcher needs to tell you something, and they will send calls along the line, and eventually somebody gets to you and say, hey, if you can find this guy, have him call this guy. Then there are the other things that we hear. And sometimes people like to be funny on guard, right?
Is it funny?
It can be funny. It can be annoying.
I think the reactions are more funny than the antagonizers.
I think you're right. But what are we talking about?
The cat's on guard.
The cat's on guard. Every now and then, unpredictable, you will hear the sound of meow.
When did this start? You've been flying longer than I have.
I was just trying to find that information. I searched it up on Google. I couldn't find it. I find a lot of people complaining about it. A lot of the pilot forums, a lot of the aviation forums. We need to stop this behavior. We need to be professional on the air. Well, there's nothing about when it started. I don't actually remember when it started.
Hold on. You lowered your voice for that quote. Are you implying that the people that are against this have lower voices than those who are making the
that's my reading from Google Voice.
Are you sure? Is that how you
Well, it is in this instance. We'll see what happens.
It implies that maybe the younger, more sarcastic generation of pilot is picking on and annoying the older stick in the mud generation of pilot.
Is there such a generation?
I don't know, but I know their reaction of the
people like that maybe walk around with their hats tightened to their heads and their double-breasted jackets pulled too. I don't know.
Double-breasted?
I don't know.
That's an inside joke for you listeners out there.
It's not hard to get outside of that joke. No, I don't know. I don't know when the meowing started. I have been doing this a while. I can't remember if it was going on in the beginning. I can't remember a start to it. I don't remember anyone ever explaining it. And Google is not being helpful with that information, but it's going on.
I wonder what the oldest forum you could find with a date on it, an oldest Reddit for Reddit, or the oldest Yahoo chat forum of 2002.
That is a rabbit hole I am likely to go down. I should have gone down before we started recording, but
You've got overnights to look this up. Plenty of time
No,
in hotels.
none lately. You want to know what's happening to me lately?
Tell me about your
Uh,
schedule.
well, I've been off since for the last week. I was supposed to do a line check on my next trip, which starts tomorrow, but I very seriously screwed up in bidding. And I forgot that my wife and daughter are going out of town this weekend, leaving my 13-year-old son at home by himself if I go to work. So I had to get out of that line check. The only negative to that is that I immediately go on vacation right after that. So it looks like now I've had a week off and I'm calling out sick to extend my vacation, which is not actually true, but that's how it goes sometimes.
If I remember correctly, your sick time use includes lack of child care in your contract.
Yeah, I don't think anybody asks any questions about why we get sick or
So
whether
you're
we're
okay.
sick.
Yeah.
Yeah,
The,
I
the
no,
legitimacy of your sick call at an airline
I
is
I said, listen, I cannot do it this weekend. I got to be home. I am happy to reschedule. You can even do it during the week I have vacation because I'm not going anywhere. It's a stupid week of the year. It's one of the dumbest weeks of the year to have vacation. But because of the intricacies of the bidding system at the airlines, we don't really get a whole lot of say in when we take a vacation. So I got stuck with this dumb week and I'm not using it. So
so
that's
cats on
cats on guard.
guard.
Yeah.
Cats on guard.
Was that a good enough explanation?
I
Can we
think
do
we can
better?
elaborate a little more.
Let's do that. Let's
All
elaborate.
right.
What?
Let me elaborate to what I hear. I hear dead silence at 2 in the morning over the flyover states of America. Let's
Yeah.
say Nebraska.
Okay.
And at 2 in the morning, we
Wait,
are just
you fly, oh, you always fly over Nebraska?
uh,
You don't stop
just
there.
well, see, even at 2 in the morning, the Northeast still has air traffic coming and
Mhm.
going.
It's true.
So it's not quiet. Oh, let's say middle America where there's less air traffic saturation. There's less communication between pilots and air traffic controls. But like we said before, there's always one radio tuned to this one frequency that everyone can hear.
Yes, there is.
And there's some antsy, knee twitching guy in an airplane somewhere who's just itching to have something to say or something to do, and he keys up the microphone on guard, which he shouldn't do unless there's an emergency, and he makes a cat noise.
Do you think it's a guy in an airplane?
Gotta be.
I I have I have a theory that I want to be true, but I know it's not true. What I think is that it's a kid, some
Hey,
15-year-old kid got a hold of his dad's handheld radio and he's hanging out in the basement listening to this, and every now and then he just meow on guard.
so to my knowledge, the strength of those transmitters is significantly less than an like a transport category. How far can
So
you transmit with that?
I did some digging this morning because in preparation for this, I pulled out my old handheld radio that I bought back in my flight instructor days. Back in my flight instructor days, I had a friend named Prissy Bauer who worked in the pilot shop. And Prissy Bauer convinced me that this handheld radio was on sale and it was a fantastic bargain and that I had to buy one and I had to have one in my bag at all times just in case the radios go down. And I don't remember what I spent, but I know that I had no money at the time. So I way overspent on this thing that I have never used.
Not once.
It's 20 years now.
Oh boy.
The one time, yeah, I would use. You know when I would use it? I take that back. I did use when I would solo a student and I would hop out of the airplane and sit on the picnic table at the airport and watch them go around the pattern. I would listen to make sure that they were doing all right. But other than that, I really didn't. So I pulled this thing out of storage today, and no, I can't really get a signal. In fact, my plan was to have it on in the background just in case anybody should meow, and I'm going to turn it on, and you're going to hear why it's not on right now.
Lovely.
Yeah, we would be listening to this the whole podcast. So, and likelihood of anybody meowing, you just never know.
So let me tell you why these meows happen. At least this is my opinion of why this happens. Immediately after a meow, nothing. Pretty much everybody lets it go, right? You just go, huh,
yes,
somebody's bored, right? But
right.
it's always about 90 seconds later, when either that same person or somebody else that's involved in this little torturous game adds another meow. Maybe it's
Yeah,
the same meow, maybe a different. maybe a longer one, maybe a
It becomes a
recording.
conversation.
Yes, it's cats on guard. Now this
It
is the
is.
emergency frequency. We're supposed to be using this frequency to communicate emergency information, and we're hearing meowing. Anyway,
Yeah.
so after this follow up, usually antagonistic second meow, because the first one gets a pass. You try to ignore it, kind of like the annoying kid at school. If you annoy him, if you just ignore it, he'll go away. Well, we
Well,
ignore the first one. The second one comes, and then I think you said before, the low voiced senior pilot who's had enough of this for the night.
you're on guard.
This is an emergency frequency.
That's right. Yeah. That's the one you hear. Now, who's saying that? Is it another pilot or is it the guy who's actually working the
My
guard
guess
frequency?
is it's a gray haired, 5 years from retirement, double breasted, probably a retired military pilot, if I
I
had
think
to
you're right.
guess.
I think you're right.
And the other thing that always wonders is when this guy comes on the radio, is the other pilot in the plane with him maybe a meower that just found out he can't do the meow?
I just wonder that too. Have you ever meowed?
Never.
I've never meowed. I've never even considered meowing, but
I've I've
somebody's doing it.
actually I've actually kicked back against the gray haired double breasted uh you know, cut it out. This
Oh,
isn't professional because that person is giving the material to trying to convince these guys or girls that that person that complains about the meow is giving the meowers a reason to meow. And if no one ever
that's
responds to
true.
their meow, then it
Yep.
just dies.
It's like when I picked my kids up from school yesterday. My daughter got out there first. She got the front seat, and he was not happy to be in the back seat, and he kept kicking the seat all the way home, and eventually, you just ignore it, right? That's supposed to stop. It didn't stop the behavior, but threatening him did. Then he was angry. Then he was angry with me. Then he was angry with me the whole rest of the day for being
Oh,
mean.
that's
But
how dare you? We should have
I
two
know.
front seats for your kids. Come
I know.
on.
I have heard other animals on guard. Have you? I've heard chickens. I heard a fantastic horse one time, and I scoured the internet trying to find these recordings, and it's not easy to do. I got one this morning that I couldn't play back. It played once, and then I tried to play it back, and it was gone. Like maybe it was just in my head, but I have heard other things on the radio, and it just blows my mind sometimes what people come up with. Very clever. I'm actually proud to be a part of this industry at this time.
The trolling of America's airwaves,
Why
emergency
not?
airwaves.
Why not? We're such a serious world. Let's lighten things up and have a little fun.
Are you a meower?
I'm not a meower. Like I said, I've never, although at times I will, just to throw off my partner, we'll get up to cruise and I'll like, and that's one of the flows. We do these flows. We push certain buttons and we flip certain switches and we do it in a certain order at a certain time. And one of those things that we do is to tune in 121.5 and have it in standby so we're listening because we're using that radio for other things up to that point. And so I will at times flip that switch. I say, okay, 121.5 is on. Do you want to meow today or do you want me to?
Oh, just to solicit the reaction of your
Yeah.
coworker for the
Yeah.
day. I
Yeah.
have
Just
another
to
question
see.
for you.
What's that?
Did you say you do that at cruise?
We do it. I don't know if
Out of,
that's what I
out
said.
of 10. Come on,
Yeah.
I even remember that old
Well,
procedure.
I don't think the general public knows the difference between 10 and cruise. You want to explain it?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Every once in a while, if you're paying attention on the climb out. So we have a sterile cockpit rule below 10,000. We try to keep the flight attendants seated below 10,000. But at the 10,000 foot mark, we tend to get away from the ground turbulence and up into the upper airspace of air travel, and we'll ding the flight attendants at 10,000 feet.
Can I
That'll
stop
symbol.
you there for a
Yeah,
second?
sure.
So, as a pilot, you just said it. We try to keep the flight attendants seated until 10,000 feet and then we ding them. That is my belief as well. I got into an argument with a flight attendant. You know, the flight attendants think that they run the show back there.
Yes. Well, they do. I mean, I don't deal
And
with what's behind that door.
I was briefing them pre-flight. It was turbulent. I said, I am not going to ding you until it is safe to get up. Because I don't want them walking around and we hit a big pocket and everybody's flying around the cabin. Stay in your seats until I ding you. Basically, it was what I said. And she started arguing with me. Well, the 10,000 foot, the ding is not for us to get out of our seats. It's for us to make the electronic announcement. Okay, well, I'm telling you that I'm going to use this thing to keep you seated. And she just wouldn't let it go. She's, oh, it drives me nuts. These flight attendants that run the show back there.
And I don't think they're trying to run the show so much as their understanding of the flow. So a trigger for her to push the button for the announcement is for you to make the button. So she doesn't push the button until you make a ding. And if you make a ding at 10,000, then she has to think that her announcement is at 10,000. But
Well,
if
I
you
don't think
change
they're,
the altitude to it, then she's thrown off as well. You have
yeah,
that bigger picture for the aircraft. She has the little pictures, you know, door one opens, door two closes, or however you want to.
yeah, you're
Yeah.
right. Well, I don't think they're all staying seated for the ding, but
Yeah. But at
anyway,
least you tried. You
I
did your
tried.
job. And
I
for
did.
liability's sake, you followed the procedure.
That's it. Cover my ass. So after 10,000, we flip the switch. Cats are on guard. And then what?
And then on the
You were
way up to
going. You
cruise,
had a
yeah,
whole bunch of stuff going.
yep. We go on up. We hear the guard. Cats, come on.
Yes, you hope.
Oh,
Cats, chickens, roosters. What's the difference between a
cows.
chicken and
I've
a
heard
rooster?
cows.
I've heard cows. I've heard dogs. I'd like to hear a fish one day. Let's see if anybody
I've
could pull
heard
that
like
off.
audio recordings on a phone.
Somebody was playing music the other day.
Yeah.
Yeah, like an entire song.
So I'll tell you, here's for those at home that don't know how we get cell phone music through the airplane. When I used to fly cargo, the old PA system that you hear when we pull up to the gate, this is your captain speaking. Well, that's the PA system in the aircraft. Well, the PA system is just a hand microphone with a push button. So this cargo plane, we used to have the PA button was still there, but there were no people or seats in the back to talk to, but we'd have cargo to load. So we would rubber band the microphone down on the handle so that the PA microphone would listen. And then we would set our phone with some music on next to that microphone. We'd have music in the back while we loaded cargo.
Oh, that's
So
clever.
that was a cool little way to spice up a loading in February at minus 20 in Canada.
Did you, when you used to fly cargo, did you, because I had a friend that once told me he used to fly 727. Didn't you say you flew that as
Yes.
well?
Yep.
He flew a load of horses.
Oh, you flew Air Horse One.
He flew, is that a thing?
Air
What?
Horse One. Air Horse
Yeah.
One.
He flew that to some horse area, and he had a load one time of live chickens, like baby
Yep.
chicks.
Yep.
And they got some chicks out of their pen, and they were like hopping around on the flight deck, hopping around on the dashboard up there. You used to do
Yep.
that as well. I see you nodding.
Very,
Yeah.
very.
Yes, very professional. I've had still some very interesting things in the flight deck.
Sure.
I have had hula hoops,
Fun.
world champion hula hooper coming home from the hula hoop competition. And the hula hoop is, it's their champion hoop. So they're not going to risk putting it in cargo underneath, and it's not going to fit in the overhead bin. Well, what's left? Somehow they get it on the airplane, right? I don't know why it gets past the gate agents or any of that. Like, clearly it's not going to fit in the overhead bin. It's not going to fit in that little test your bag box that they have right next to the gate. But somehow they get down to their seat with it and they realize, oh no, this isn't going to fit. What am I going to do with this? So, hey, guess what? I got a nice roomy cockpit. Bring it up front. We'll put it up there. I've had that. I've had dance trophies, wedding dresses. I'm trying to think of other things. One thing I do remember, there was a time I was flying over the Orlando area. And what's down in Orlando? Disney World, right? We're, I don't know, 20, 30,000 feet in the air. And a Mickey Mouse balloon flies by.
Okay.
And the guy, yeah. Well, and it's one of these balloons that's like a balloon inside of a balloon. So it's Mickey Mouse's head inside, which is inflated inside of another balloon. And the guy I was flying with happened to live in the Orlando area. And he was very familiar with this balloon. He said, oh, that's a really expensive balloon. That's some dad's really angry. By the way, is this voice acceptable? Different voice?
I already see the pilot. Yes.
Yeah. Well, there's a really he's an angry dad down there. Some kid, that's like a $35 balloon. Okay. So always remembered this. Years later, I'm doing a flight out of Orlando and there's some commotion in the back of the airplane during boarding. And there's a kid who has this exact balloon trying to stuff it in the overhead bin and it won't fit. And they're panicking about what to do with it. Flight attendant's solution is to pop the balloon. She's getting ready to take a scalpel to it and just murder the thing. And I said, no, you can't. That's a $35 balloon. Some dad's going to be really angry. I've got a spot for it. So I brought it up front. I tied it to my bag. It just floated behind my head the whole flight. And we had that Mickey Mouse balloon up there. Now,
Oh, that's really nice of you.
have you ever had a bottle of water that you have been drinking in flight and you haven't finished it? So it's like half filled but opened.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. You're talking about air expansion and
Air
contraction.
expansion
Yeah.
and contraction happens. So these bottles will contract and they'll, what do you,
On descent, if you open it at altitude, yeah.
on descent, if you open it at altitude and it's sitting there with the lid, it will squeeze. Like, what do you call that? Implode? Not implode because it doesn't implode, but contract.
Correct. Yeah. It creates a
So
vacuum inside.
yeah, so we've got this Mickey Mouse balloon behind my head, and we started our descent, and I noticed my water bottle next to me does this, and I thought, oh no, what's going to
Or,
happen? What's going to happen to Mickey?
oh, no.
Mickey was fine. Mickey survived. $35 gets you a strong balloon. So
Oh, no.
that was good. And people are happy. People are always happy when I give them a little storage space up front for things that they shouldn't have brought with them.
Hey, while we're on the topic of air expansion and contraction, have you ever heard the never open a yogurt towards you at altitude?
Oh, I would never open a yogurt towards me at any altitude because I can't stand yogurt.
Oh, well, okay. Well, for those of you yogurt eaters out here, if you get in an aircraft at sea level or anywhere on the ground level, your yogurt has air in it from sea level roughly or wherever it was packaged. However, when you get up to altitude, the air inside wants to expand, like a bag of chips. It's got expanded air in there. Now, anyone who's opened yogurt knows there's a little extra yogurt hanging around the top by the lid. So when you finally peel that foil back and that air wants to escape, guess where it goes?
On your shirt, on your pilot
Yogurt
shirt.
all over you.
So aim it at the guy next to you.
Or pop a little hole in the top first or something.
Oh,
Just get the
that,
air out of there first.
that reminds me of a fun Prissy Bauer story. So my friend Prissy Bauer, who worked at the pilot shop and is a pilot, and he worked in the airlines for a little while, he liked to drink chocolate milk. And he would go into the airports and he would find a little store and he would buy himself some chocolate milk. And one day he got in, sat down in his seat, and he opened it, went to take a sip, and then realized he had forgotten to shake it.
Oh,
You want to
no.
shake. You want to shake
Gross.
your chocolate, mix
Yeah,
your
yeah.
chocolate. So So before he took his sip, he shook it. Also forgetting that he had just taken the lid off the thing,
No lid
and
shake.
it's a no lid shake. It goes
Oh,
all over the overhead panel,
oh,
and then bounces off the overhead panel onto the captain sitting next to him,
oh.
and soaks the guy in chocolate. So
Terrible.
terrible.
Bad thought.
Oh my
But
gosh.
actually, I did something very similar to that on one of my last trips on the 727. I carry around these little injectable flavoring bottles. Have you ever seen them? They're called
Oh,
like Meow or
I
Crystal Light.
see them all the time.
Yep. So I have those. I
Pilots
crack
love
open
these
my.
things.
Well, yeah, because you don't have to wait to get a drink. You can have 5 different flavors in your bag ready to go. You can make
Yeah.
lemonade, iced tea, Gatorade. You can make anything with these drink squeezes. So
Mhm.
anyway, so I get the bottle of water. I open it. I squeeze the mix into it. And this is red fruit punch, by the way.
I'm not familiar, but
Yeah,
okay. Oh,
I'm no longer carrying red fruit
I,
punch mix
I
with me.
thought you said Redford Punch, like that's a brand of punch.
No, I don't. I guess there's only one
Red
fruit punch, and it's always red,
Red
isn't it?
Fruit Punch. No, it's not. Have you ever opened up a Capri Sun fruit punch?
I have
They're all
not.
clear. They're all
Seriously,
clear.
that's
Yeah.
gross.
Every Capri Sun is clear in color.
So the red
Yeah.
is the red doesn't need to be there.
Well, they don't call it red. They just call it fruit punch.
Okay, I always thought fruit
Yeah.
punch was red.
Yeah. It's probably what's that red dye number 5 that kills people. That's
Great.
probably what you're drinking.
Let's get
Anyway,
another case for my kids from Costco.
you had one.
I did.
Yeah.
And I squirted, and then I went to give it a shake, and just like your friend, there was no top on there.
Uh-huh. Where'd it
So,
go?
everybody, everywhere.
Oh my God. It's in a 727 with 4 of you in
Yeah,
flight.
yeah.
How about you were the hero of the day?
Oh yeah, everyone loves me. Thankfully, I had a Boy Scouts worth of kit. I had baby wipes in my bag to help clean everything up. So,
Baby wipes. I didn't know those would work. That's clever.
oh, absolutely. They'll do
Okay.
stains. They'll do screens. They'll do everything.
And they'll do fruit punch.
With a little help from the shell wipes, but yeah.
Had a jump seater, or maybe he was a dead. I don't know. Hey, let me ask you this question. Okay, first I'm going to explain jump seating and deadheading before I tell the story. Jump seating is that we have our two seats for our two pilots who fly the airplane, and that is right at the front of the aircraft. Behind that, in just about every flight deck, you will find at least one and usually two extra seats we call jump seats. And these are for extra people who come aboard and sit. Now, I believe, stated reason why they exist is for instructor pilots to sit and observe, or representatives of the Federal Aviation Administration.
Colloquially.
We call these guys feds. I had
Yep.
a fed on board. These people also sit in the jump seat. But if no one is occupying the jump seat for those stated reasons, the jump seat is available for traveling crew members who are traveling for personal business, right? I want to get somewhere. I'm going to work. I'm going to jump seat. So you go, you beg the pilot, hey, can I have a ride? And sometimes you bring candy to the sweet talk the gate agents to let you on. And if there's no seat in the back, somebody ends up sitting in that flight deck on the jump seat. The other thing we have is a deadheader. I don't know why it's called deadhead. I should look that up, because that is a strange enough term that I've never understood, because I always thought a deadhead was a fan of the Grateful Dead. Did you
That's
not?
what I thought. That's what I thought.
And I don't know why it's called that, but what it means is basically a commercial pilot or crew member, flight attendant, who is being transported from one place to another, like a
So
passenger.
for the intention of operating or coming back from operating a flight. So they're a head on board that is not a functioning crew member, however, they
Correct.
are a crew member.
Correct. Um,
So maybe
so,
deadhead is that they're not functional. They're not
I like
functional crew.
that. I like that. Well, and that's why when you see a pilot, or specifically a pilot, sitting in the back passenger seat, don't say to them, shouldn't you be up there flying a plane? That's my passenger voice, I guess. Shouldn't you be up there? No, I shouldn't be, because if I was up there, I would be grumpy.
I'd be
Anyway,
on duty.
I'd be on duty. Well, actually, deadheaders are on duty, aren't they?
Yeah, kind of. On the beginning end, yes. On the tail end, not so much.
So when you're jump seating, you are required to get permission from the captain. When you're deadheading, you're not. So this is the question I have for you. Do you, when you're deadheading, go up front and say hello and introduce yourself?
That's a hit or miss question. I
What,
would say sometime.
sometimes you take a pitch.
If there is time, if it's not busy, if I'm there early, if they're there early, but if it's a scramble and I'm running from gate to gate, and I have a seat to get into and I have to go home or go to work and it's busy and there's a long boarding line, I will just go to my seat and sit because I have a boarding pass to be sitting there. I don't need permission. I is just a paid customer as far as the crew knows.
Okay, what if you are working for a different airline? Sometimes your airline will buy you a ticket on another airline to get you where you're going. And that's still called deadheading. But now you're in another uniform and they don't recognize you as one of their own. They're going to think maybe you're a jump seating pilot that didn't come up front and say hello.
Well, why don't you explain why that's a bad thing?
Well, it's a bad thing, because when you're jump seating, you are doing so at the pleasure of the captain.
You're a guest,
You're a guest. Not only are you,
unpaid.
well, well, technically, no, you're not a guest. If you're occupying that jump seat, you are considered a member of that crew.
An additional crew member,
You are
ACM.
yes, an additional crew member. And so if you don't let the captain know that you're there, you're basically freeloading, and they are well within their rights to kick you off that airplane if they so choose. So, yeah, the question is, you're deadheading in uniform on a different airline. Do you identify yourself? I don't. I'll be honest with you. I don't, because like you said, I have a ticket. If anybody asks, I'll tell them. And
I have a
actually,
ticket. That's all.
yeah, yeah. Sometimes I'll just say it to the flight attendant as I'm getting on. I have a ticket. And why do I bring any of this up? We've gone on for 10 minutes about deadheading and jump seating. I thought we were talking about spilling things in the flight deck. That's why I had a deadheader or a jump seater. Sometimes the jump seaters will sit in the back if there's an open seat. They don't sit up front, but they're still considered a jump seating pilot. I had one come up one time to say hello. And he was either sitting up there with us. I can't remember if he was actually occupying the flight deck, but he had a soda can in his hand and he dropped it.
In
And
the
it,
flight
yeah,
deck.
he dropped it and it just hit exactly perfectly that it erupted and sprayed from the floor of the flight deck all the way up to the overhead panel and then cascaded down onto everything. And we kind of sat there in stunned silence looking at this mess. And you know what he said? He was so cool. He goes, "Oh, don't worry about it. It's diet. It won't be sticky."
Smart man.
Yeah. And you know what? It wasn't sticky either.
That's
So,
too funny.
yeah. I was doing a red eye one time. I had my laptop with me, which lives in my bag on the floor at my side. In in a pocket inside my laptop, but just the very top, it's open. But it's you just the smidgen little gap to get to it. I was doing a red eye. It was dark. I don't like to turn lights on. I like to maintain that night vision. And also, if I don't like the person I'm sitting with, I don't want to have to see them. So I have I can't drink coffee because I think it tastes like dirt. So I will drink Coca-Cola to get my caffeine fix at night, help me keep awake. I had one sitting. There's a little. Now we do have. This is on me. We do have a cup holder in the Airbus cockpit. There's one on either side of our flight station, but there's only one for each pilot. So you open a can, you pour it into a cup. Now you have a can and a cup and only one cup holder. So what do you do? Because
Why do we have a can and a cup? Tell me that.
because some people need to drink cold beverages, and I like to have ice. That's why I have a
Ice.
cup. I
Okay.
want ice.
Why aren't the drinks cold to begin with?
The drinks should be cold. Well, you know what? A lot of people don't like them cold.
Really? Room
A lot of
temperature
people
soda.
a lot of people live like they're in Europe, I guess, most of the time, and they don't chill their beverages over there. They're,
I just feel like that's cost cutting measures to keep the
you
drinks
know,
room temp.
I don't know. There's plenty of ice though, and there is actually a cooling shelf. If you put the can, so there's two windows on the side. There's a window right next to the pilot that opens. That's our escape route if we need to. Behind that is another window, and there is a little a track where the opening window slides to when you open it. That track gets extremely cold, and it's inches from the outside where it's minus 60 degrees Celsius. Do you know what that is in
Centigrade.
we don't say Celsius.
I don't know. I'm just making it up.
um, I'm going to look it up because I want the listener to know how quickly you can actually chill your beverage if you don't have ice. It's negative 76 degrees Fahrenheit.
For the record, only a millimeter or two of that can is actually touching that rail
Yeah,
because it sits on these two little posts in a slide track. So it's kind of essentially sitting on top of a Lego pattern,
but
just tiny little contacts, and it cools that can
oh,
so quick.
30 minutes, it's ready for drinking. So anyway, where was I going? Oh yeah. So I had my cup of ice because I didn't have the patience to wait that 30 minutes. You order a drink, you want it right away. They bring it to you, you open it up, you pour it over ice. I set the can in the cup holder for refills. I have a little ledge next to my station. I set my cup there. Open cup. And it's dark. I can't see. At some point, of course, I knocked it over, spilled it. And it trickles down into my flight case. It finds its way to the pouch where my laptop is living.
Uh,
And it it meandered through the workings of the device into the battery compartment and all over the motherboard.
Oh,
And it
dude,
never worked. It never worked right after that. So
that is unfortunate.
these are the things that happen in flight that you never see because we closed that door. And if that door didn't exist, I don't know how we'd get away with it.
Yeah, they
You
hear
don't
a
have
lot.
a door. You don't have a door in your new job, do you?
I don't. I have a jump seat. I have, we have a door between the galley and the cabin, but not between the galley and the cockpit.
Is the Where's the cabin in relation to the galley and the cockpit?
So first it goes cockpit, then at main entry door, then lavatory and crew rest bunk, then galley, then a door, bulkhead, then main cabin, then another bulkhead to a bedroom, then another bulkhead to a lavatory
Jesus.
again, and then another bulkhead to a baggage compartment.
Jesus, Hernando, Christ. How big is this aircraft? You got
It's a
bedrooms and
hundred feet,
galleys, and
100 feet long by 100 feet wide.
that's a big plane.
It sure
Uh,
is.
Actually, it's not that big a plane, but it's got a lot in it.
It's
So
got
the
a lot.
question I was asking is your open cockpit visible to your passengers?
It is during descent and climb. We have that door open. In cruise, the door between the galley and the cabin stays closed, and so the only flight
So
attendant
you
can
can
see
goof
us.
off. So you can still goof off up there.
Yeah, we don't goof off at all. We're very professional
Right, right. Well,
with free Wi-Fi. We're professionals with free Wi-Fi.
but somebody on the ground is goofing around or in another airplane somewhere meowing on guard and
They are,
keeping
and
us
we're hearing
entertained.
it, and it's just so annoying
You're
stuff.
annoyed by it. Ugh.
I'm
You
not
know what
annoyed by
annoys
it. I'm
me?
annoyed by the reactions. I told you I don't mind the random
Oh,
meow.
you know what annoys me on that frequency? When somebody's ELT goes off. You know what an ELT is?
It's an emergency locator transmitter. Does everyone at home know what an emergency locator
No,
transmitter is? I'm sure they,
no,
if they've been on a boat,
nobody
they
knows.
know about an
Nobody knows.
EHIRB.
We're gonna explain it. We're gonna explain
Okay.
it like we're five. That is the. It's a. What is it? You explain it.
Emergency
I don't even know.
locator
I know what it is,
transmitter.
but
And
you're better at
it's,
this stuff.
I believe it's impact triggered from a certain G load that will set it off in the armed position.
So
And the
if you
EL,
crash,
yeah,
it makes a
or
noise.
hit something hard enough, maybe you're not dead, but it will transmit an emergency tone on the 121.5 frequency. And as long as the battery is alive, and it will transmit it, and it will get stronger as you get close to her. It's a homing beacon, if you will.
And as much as we hear cats, we hear these things going off too. Which I
That,
always think, did a plane just crash? Why is this suddenly going off? And sometimes it's pretty loud.
so
Sometimes it's
sometimes,
weak.
now I believe the regulation book says that you can test or cycle these in the last 5 minutes of every hour. If I
Oh,
remember correctly, the
you might
last
be
five
right
minutes
about
of
that.
every hour is the time when you can unplug and plug them in, or check them and test them, and maintenance
Hmm.
shops and such. So if I do ever hear one, I always look at a clock. Immediately my head goes to the clock.
Well, next time I hear one, I'm going to look at a clock and see. I've been looking at the clock when I hear meowing so that I can write it down and try to figure out what part of the sky I'm in. So I can go to liveatc.net and try to find a recording of that so I could include it here in our podcast. But I've had very, very bad luck doing that so far.
You have a lot of dedication to this. I appreciate that.
Well,
The
that's how I
other
came
the
up
other
with the name.
signal, the other signal could be, so on the switch. It's a spring loaded 3 position switch. There's off, on, and armed. We're off, test, and armed. I think test is essentially on. Um,
Are we back on the ELT now?
yeah, we are, absolutely. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Oh, sorry about that. I didn't
That's
clarify.
okay.
Yeah, we're
That's
no,
okay.
the cats don't have an on off button, unfortunately.
Well, they do. You're supposed to listen to them, so they're on.
They're always
That's how
on.
I came up with the name for this podcast one day. We were going through our 10,000 foot flow, and somebody switched the frequency and said, "Cats on guard." It might have been me that said it. It might have been the guy next to me. But when I heard it, whether it was my own ears
Boom,
that,
that's your title.
oh, this is it. I was planning this podcast for a while and I needed a name, and that's it. I was originally going to call it Two Pilots Talking About Stuff.
See Seinfeld.
Yeah, and that was that was the reaction that I was expecting right there. Dead silence.
You hear the
Well,
ELT, we hear the cats on guard, and then we hear like 0.01% of the time, we hear what it's actually meant for, dealing with an emergency. Have you heard
Have you
those?
ever been? Have you ever had to deal with that?
I do, and I hate it because remember I was saying how some of these transmitters are stronger than others. The transport category airliners can transmit hundreds of miles, and a Cessna can transmit maybe 50 or 60 miles, and so there'll be
Yeah.
an actual Cessna having an actual emergency somewhere at 3,000 feet over whatever state, and they are transmitting for help, and they are maydaying. And 300 miles away, there is a Boeing somewhere that hears garbled static. And
Or
that Boeing
cats.
with his, or cats, and that Boeing comes on the radio with his big, powerful transmitter. You're on guard. This is an emergency frequency. And steps on the little Cessna with an actual emergency.
Yeah.
I hear that way
Well,
too many times.
so the goal then is that we should all meow a lot more so that these guys, these you're on guard guys, will have so much heartache and they just can't take it. They'll all quit and they'll be
So
gone.
I've never heard a meower interrupt an emergency,
Okay,
like an
that's
actual
smart.
emergency. I've never heard
That's
a
good.
meower cut off somebody with an engine failure who's making an emergency gliding landing into a highway somewhere. But I have heard Boeings and Airbuses, commercial aviators, jump all over a gargled transmission. You're on guard. This is guard.
They do like to
You're
remind themselves
transmitting
where
on
they
an
are.
emergency frequency. And
Yeah.
the people
Well,
on the receiving end of it are deliberately trying to use the emergency frequency. Drives
so
me
there's
wild.
actually a use for it. Some people know what it's for. Others entertain.
Yeah, but the reaction crowd is actually more detrimental to the safety of aviation than the antagonizers here.
Well, it's a very reactive industry, isn't it?
Yeah, that's right.
They've never taken any proactive steps to prevent anything. They wait for it to happen and then they react.
The
So why should it
regulations
be any
are
different?
written in blood, as they say in
Yes.
classrooms nationwide, worldwide.
Well, that's a fun way to end everything. Thank you for that segue. And I think we have covered the cats pretty extensively here. I hope everybody has an understanding of it.
I think they do,
Any last
but they can
thoughts?
write in. They can write in their questions, and we'll answer them at future time.
Send your questions. catsonguard@gmail.com. We will see you next time. We've got more coming. I'm MC Howe.
Captain Richard Million.
Richard, you're so formal, Richard. Rich Million.
You know what some people call me?
Yeah. We will see you next time.